Okay, welcome everybody to another 4DMethod 40 user group. Today is March 16th, 2022. This is hot on the heels of our last meeting. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Officially calling this still meeting number 56. I gotta keep on getting those numbers up. Normally I would do some blurb here, but I'm going to keep it short. My name is Brent Raymond. I organize the 4DMethod 40 user group. The website is 4DMethod.com. Come and check it out. There's a lot of interesting material from old meetings and new announcements. Check out the most recent job posting on there. Looks pretty cool. And I can be reached at 40method@gmail.com. Right, I'm going to skip this, but it's still in the slides for those of you that haven't heard it apparently 55 other times. But we get together here to talk 4D and what's going on in the world of 4D and share new developments, stuff people are working on. A couple of weeks ago, Aparajita Fishman joined us to give us a tour of his new component that introduces several popular JavaScript libraries that he ported into 4D. There was so much interest and so much to discuss. He was not able to get to all of the features he wanted to highlight. I know a lot of people watch these demos on the 4DMethod YouTube channel after the meeting happens due to time zone differences or scheduling conflicts. If you're watching this as a recording and you haven't watched the first demo, I strongly suggest you put this on pause and go and watch that. It will provide some handy background for what we're gonna delve into today. If you're here with us live, welcome again. And you missed the last meeting, well, hold on to your socks. No worries though. Aparajita will start with a bit of a review before digging into new material. So let's see if hopefully he's up. There you are. He's ready, and time to hand it over to Aparajita and get back into the good stuff.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yep.
For having me back. Nice to see everyone. I guess we could start by opening the floor to questions from the last time. If you have any questions that you'd like to have answered from the first session.
Were there, I assume there were a few interesting thoughts shared on the happy hour afterwards.
Yeah.
Was there anything in specific that came up during that time that is worth?
Oh, yeah. I am going to release, so I'm going to release this as a commercial product, hopefully along with some training, which will cover how to use the component and as well sort of a general training on how to use 4D in an object-oriented way. All the tricks and tips that I've discovered. When? Yeah, that's a big question. I'll need a few weeks to put it all together. Yeah, and I have to figure out the pricing, so forth. So,
are you planning on covering all the areas of the component?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be, like 10 hours of training.
Okay.
Because I want to cover the whole thing and how to get the most out of classes in 4D.
Could you throw it out earlier than that, just in whatever form it is, and let us play with it so that we have some idea of how to learn?
Yeah, I need a week or two to just polish up a few things and make sure it's really ready for prime time. As far as the component itself.
Will you be creating all the documentation for this yourself, or given that most of it is ported from other libraries, will you mostly lean on documentation for those libraries?
Yes, I will. I mean, it's thoroughly documented within the source code, but I suppose I can just make a markdown document as well.
So the expectation is if you pay for the license to the component, that you'll get the source as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Aparajita, if making a documentation page for every single one of these classes and all the functions in it, that's a tremendous amount of work to make one. But if you can't go to that level of detail for documentation, at least make the stub so that when your mouse hovers over, the commands, you get the syntax and things in the method editor.
Yeah, well, 4D does that for you anyway.
Without any markdown documentation, you get that. But
yeah, I mean, 4D parses the source of any class, and if you here, for example, let me share my screen.
Yep. Let me stop sharing here, and then go ahead and share yours.
Okay. All right. So, for example, if I say, I have to do this. Fortunately, I have to do that. So if I said logger dot, yes, it's actually showing you right there, the hint. You see it?
Yeah, I do see it, but I guess it doesn't it also show like what the parameters are that can be passed into?
Yeah, it's showing right here.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, and if I type that, then down at the bottom of the method editor, it's showing the parameters.
I believe,
and that's without doing any markdown at all.
Yeah, that's 4D is doing that.
Okay.
4D,
4D parses all class functions. So to give you hints like that and completion.
4D had in one of the more recent versions had made it so that the comments immediately preceding a function would also show up in the hover tips. But given the way that your component is structured, it might be at a lower level.
Well, the problem is in classes. See, the problem is in classes. Where is the? In classes, unfortunately, they made a decision to separate functions by white space. So if I put something above this, 4D actually considers it to be part of the function above. This comment here is not considered part of this function. It's actually considered to be at the bottom of that. And so
I'll look into I'll look into see if maybe on the blog while you move on, I can see see if I can find what I'm thinking about.
So let's see if I did what I did here before. And let's see if I did this. Yeah, I mean, if I, it doesn't. Yeah, I think if you do markdown, it will show the comments, but not from the code. Yeah,
I'll hunt around, but no reason to get hung up on that.
the markdown, that you can set some things up and you get a little bit more information, make it a little bit richer. But
Yeah, but unfortunately, when you do the markdown, then this this kind of gets, it's like you have to do this manually.
yeah, right. You can override it, and so it's like I said, it's a lot of work to
Yeah,
do
it's
every one of them.
unfortunately, yeah. So actually, I'll say this now, and I'll say it at the end. There are 4 feature requests I made, which I hope we can get a lot of votes for. So that these are the things that I feel are most critical to taking the language forward. And Brent can post those links. But there's
Yeah.
one other thing.
I have those
Which-
in the
Yeah.
slide on the that I'll show afterwards.
There's one other feature request I did not make, which I will make, which I think is even more important, and that is that 4D follow an RFC methodology. And what that means is, so right now they're looking at votes on the forum to decide what to implement, but then they're not actually soliciting any feedback from us on how to implement it. And in some cases, well, in a lot of cases I've run into, that ends up, we get implementations that kind of have holes in them, and then we have to wait till the next R release to fix. And in most other languages, in the open source languages and large open source frameworks, once they decide to, once they propose to implement a feature, they post an RFC, request for comments, describing what the feature would be and the proposed implementation. Then people can comment on it, discuss it, and then only after all of the potential issues have been addressed and the implementation proposal is modified accordingly, do they then decide to implement it? And I think that would really help everyone, because then unforeseen issues might be resolved before it's actually put into production. So anyway, I will add, I'm going to add that one more feature request, and hopefully we can get some votes on that. Okay, so there were no questions from, no other questions from last time? No, okay. So, all right, well, I think I'll start with, I'll just go down the list of what I did not cover last time. Let's start with the logger. So logging, why is logging important? Well, in every other language, they're logging facilities. And, you know, many times when you're debugging, it's really useful to just be able to capture a bunch of state as it's executing, rather than having to go into the debugger, you put a breakpoint in, it stops. And then you have to look and see what it says, and then it stops again and looks what, and especially if it's in a loop. And then there are times where you can't debug like that because it's time sensitive. So for debugging, logging is extremely useful, but also logging is extremely useful for logging, for logging what's going on. Like just like we have web logs, it can be extremely useful to have other logs for auditing purposes, especially. So what I've done is I have, so to actually log right now, so to be able to log to the console, this only works on Mac OS because they haven't implemented standard out logging on Windows 4D, I should say. So I'm actually going to start 4D from the command line. And now, when I log the standard out from 4D, it will end up here. So we've got this handy dandy. Oh yeah, by the way, I wrote a macro you can select a bunch of code and, oh, it's not here. It's in my other copy. I wrote a macro that lets you select a bunch of lines and then you select the macro and it surrounds those lines with a block comment. But I did not copy it over to this machine. Anyway.
That seems like another good request for 4D for their menu options.
I mean, yeah. So, okay. So what can we do? So we use the console. We just say console dot, and then there are log levels. So the log levels are they are from lowest to highest, from most critical to least critical. Error. Let's copy this. Oh. Error. Warn. Info. Verbose and debug. Okay, so now I'm going to do this. Okay, so by default, there's this is totally configurable. What I actually did is I ported, this to 4D. This is one of the most popular, probably the most popular logging libraries for JavaScript, for Node, actually. And it's completely configurable. So there's a default, which you saw here, gives you a timestamp, and then the level, and it colorizes the level, and then it shows the message, right? Now, you notice I actually did not, come on, Zoom, please. Thank you. It did not show the verbose and debug because there's something called a log level, the current log level. So anything, if the level, this is from most critical to least critical, and there's also a level called silent, which turns everything off. So right by default, the level is info, which means that anything from info and more critical is displayed, but anything less critical will not be displayed. So if I want to see all of those, I would have to say console.level, that's bug. And now we'll see all of them. So now this is totally configurable. Let us say I want to see the milliseconds in the timestamp. Okay, so I also implemented these formatters from here, almost all of them. And so what we do is we let's just build it up here, what we're gonna to see. Say oops. Okay, and then, whoops, lost all my logging there. There we go. Okay. Okay, so let's see what happens now. All right, so yeah, so we just got the message. Where's my timestamp? Oh yeah, I have to display it, right? So so I've overridden the format completely, and what this lets us do is actually build up a format from these formatters. So I actually need to tell the logger you say printf, or I can say format, and I'll give it a template. And I want to display the timestamp and message. Okay, let's see what happens now. Okay, there we go. So now I want to add the level. Again, now we've got the level, colon, and I'd like to colorize the level. Okay, and maybe I want to colorize everything. And all of these formatters take options which let you configure the formatter. So I'll say all true, which will colorize the whole thing, colorize the message as well. And let's say I want to align the colons. These are all different widths. So I say logger.formats.pad levels. Now they're aligned. And now I want the timestamp to be, I can give it a format. What does timestamp take? Let's see. Timestamp format, right? Okay. So I want the format to be, let's say I want to have, let's say I want the actual, I want to say Wednesday. I want the day name, abbreviated day name, Wednesday, and then the abbreviated month name. So it'll be Wednesday, March 16th, and I want this to be space padded. And then the 4-digit year. Okay, see what happens. There we go. Oh yeah, guess I want the time. There we go. Okay, so so you can see how easy it is to just format this however you want. And individual formatters can even have a level associated with it. So you can, I'm sorry, transports, right? So in addition to having all these formats, you can, the actual implementation of the logging is done through what's called a transport, which is just, it's a class. And right now there's like an API, and it's very simple. It's just got a log method, which gets an info object. And right now I've only implemented the console transport. And all it does is it uses log event to log the message. You could, I'll probably add a file transport, which will rotate every day or at a given size. You could write a transport, for example, that logged to a window within 4D. You could do, basically, you could do it, you could add a transport that logged to the database. And the beauty of it is that you can, when you can configure the logger to have more than one transport. And each transport can actually have its own level as well. So if you only want to log errors to one transport and you want to log everything else to another transport, you can do that. So when you configure, you can pass a collection of transports, and every message, whenever I call console.whatever, that will go to all of the transports, all the configured transports. So it's very, very powerful.
That's neat to be able to have different consoles configured, be able to log, in various directions on the fly.
Any questions before I go on?
So you could have it configured to where it would send it to the console and to the file both. You could have two transports.
Yes. Yep, you can have multiple, because it gets a here. I mean, let's see. I could do this. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I can have, basically when you configure, configure takes formats. It also takes transports, which is a collection. So you can have multiple transports configured for the console. And the console, by the way, is just a global instance of a logger. You can create your own instances of the logger as well. But just as a convenience, I have a singleton instance of the logger, which I access through the console method. And this trick I showed you last time. This is just a convention I use to access singletons. Okay, clear as mud. All right, so there's all kinds of, there's a bunch of formats. Let's see. Let's look real quick at the formats. Yeah, there's a label, metadata, pad levels we saw, printf we saw, timestamp you saw, there's colorize and uncolorize. And then there's also Ansi, which lets you do stuff like this. let you colorize parts of the message. So let's say I'm going to do and it's longer that yeah it's in formats. Okay, okay, formats Ansi, which takes the text and the color. Yeah, so this lets me say this is red and give it give it the text I want to colorize. This and then the color name and we can even, there's a whole bunch of there's all these styles you can use. There's text colors, background colors. There's bright, there's dim, bold, italic, underline. So I can say, let's say I want to be, let's say bold dot green dot, let's say green with, I don't know, background, let's say we want the yellow background. Okay, so let's see if this works. There we go.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Okay, so that is logging. What's next?
I'm sure we all have our own tools and libraries or not for logging, but this is super handy stuff. It's especially for tracking any sort of issues or just a whole host of different uses for this kind of logging.
Any idea on how to support Windows, make it a little more cross-platform?
Well, on Windows, what happens is it logs to there's a application on Windows called debug view, and so by default the console transport logs to into 4D debug message, which if you run that debug view application, it shows it there. Otherwise, you can just make another transport, which I'm gonna implement this file, daily rotate file transport, so you can log to a file and then watch the file, or you could write a transport which logs to a window within 4D.
But this Windows After Debug view, it supports all these features, the coloring and all that kind of stuff.
Well, the coloring, no, because the coloring that only works with the coloring is based on the ANSI color codes.
Okay.
Which only a terminal will understand. So,
but all the other formatting works, just not color.
just not color. I mean, you could implement, you
That's
can
fine.
implement your own formatters as well. There's actually, all the formats are basically the formatters get an info object which has like the level and the message, and then you just have to spit out a modified info object. You know, you can modify the message and whatever. So you can make your own if you need to colorize in a different way. Like for instance, there could be a HTML colorizer, right? And you could just write your own. You could write an HTML colorize formatter, which colorize, instead of using Ansi codes, colorizes using using CSS. So this is using Ansi by default. So the other thing we could do is to actually, you know, make a feature request to 4D to make console logging work on Windows. But it's going to be a year off until that happens, because that won't happen until v19r5 at the earliest, because 4 is already frozen, feature frozen. So anyway, yeah, I mean, because it's just so, it's completely configurable, you can figure out a way to do it. And then the top level, you know, all this remains the same, but this can just go to, it'll be formatted and however you want based on the format you configure it with, and it can go to whatever transports you want. So yes, very powerful. There's basically nothing you can't do. I mean, you could write a transport that logged it to a remote server via TCP if you wanted. I actually did that at one point, and it worked great. So, okay, so that was logging. What is next? I went over testing real quick last time. Do you want to see more?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, so the idea is, I have this class, my foo class, and I want to test that it's actually acting as I expect it to. So, well, how do I do that? Well, I write a class called I write a test class, and I extend the Mocha base test, instantiate a test runner, tell the runner what test methods to call. These are class functions actually within this class. And then classes are classes the runner should instantiate, and test classes it should instantiate and then run. In this case, I don't have any. I just want to do this. So, okay, I want to test. So first, I want to test that bar returns the input plus bar. Okay, so I've told it to test bar. And what this, I mean, this is like the base name, and basically whatever names you give here, it capitalizes the first letter and prepends test. That's what happens. So bar here becomes, we'll run that function. So there's a hierarchy. There are suites, and within suites, you can have subsuites and tests or tests. So each test function gets the current suite, and I want to give this suite a title. And this is actually now what I get back is actually a subsuite. And by convention, I call it because then I have this nice syntax. It should. And so one of the methods on a suite is a function, class function called should, which describes a test. And I can also say specify. The difference between specify and should just is called specify and prepends should. Yeah, that's all. It's just a convenience. So a test gets a description, and then you give it one or more formulas to execute. And the formula, when it's called, this is an instance of Mocha test, which has an expect function. An expect takes a value, and then you chain to that what you expect that value to be. And you can have one or more. So let's say, so we look here, we see, okay, the bar function gets an input and adds bar to the end. Okay, so what do we expect? So I expect, I've created an instance of my foo class, and I'm going to call foo.bar baz, and I expect foo.bar baz to equal as bar, right? Make sense? Anyone there?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay. Okay, that's the formula, and I typically go like that. Okay, make it clear. Okay, so let's run it. And we just run it by saying foodtest.new.run. And lo and behold, there we go. So top level suite was foo, right? So that's what we see there at the top level. Then the subsuite, next level down, is bar. Okay. And then within that, all the tests are indented within that. So that's our hierarchy. So that test passed. Okay. In interpreted mode, if we hover over, it tells us where it is. If we click on it, it takes us right to that test. So now, of course, in 4D, string comparisons are not case sensitive. We want this to be case sensitive, so we say to strict equal. So there are some in the chain. There are a bunch of chain verbs, and some of them set flags. So strict sets a flag which makes assertions following it strict. So equal, when this assertion is run, it checks to see if the strict flag was set, and if it is, it actually does a case and diacritical comparison. So this actually now will fail because I'm saying it should be strict, right? So I expect the value on the left to strictly equal the value on the right, and they don't equal. They're not strictly equal. So
do you have any hint on how you kick back to the method line, to from the output window?
yeah, so Well, I mean, so so this is like a 90% feature complete implementation of Mocha, and I implemented the entire API for test reporters. And so the default reporter is an HTML reporter. It's this guy here, the Mocha HTML reporter. And what it does is it embeds JavaScript in this web area, which calls, where is it? Yeah, it calls Mocha open method and passes the class name, dot function name, and the line. And that, so Mocha open method calls Lodash under open method. Which calls resolve method ref, which actually has to parse the, if it's a class, if the method reference is a class, it actually has to parse the class. Actually has to parse the code because, yeah, 4D didn't quite.
And that's why it took 3 milliseconds to run that little tiny test because
No,
it also did a
no, it
parse.
took 3 milliseconds. No, it took 3 milliseconds because it was doing a bunch of stuff. I mean, yeah, I mean, because it had to build the report. Actually, yeah.
Because it had to open a method and parse to get the line number. So it had to do that parsed in 3 milliseconds.
Well, no, that's not what took the 3 milliseconds.
Oh,
The
okay.
3 milliseconds was the time it took to, this 3 milliseconds is the time it took to run the test runner. All I'm doing embedding here, I'm not here, I'm actually, the line number I'm getting by, yeah, it's just crazy hacks. Let's see, where is that? It's in Mocha Runner. I know I'm getting the line number somewhere. Where is it? Yeah, I think it's in Mocha test. I think
Maybe it's using call chain or something.
yeah, I'm using call chain, and I'm let's see, pretty sure maybe it's in Lang. No. Yeah, I think I'm yeah, I'm forcing an assertion to fail and then getting the call chain.
Crafty.
So you are triggering a runtime error and then trapping it to get the line number.
Yeah, let's see.
Great. That's what I was thinking. I thought, I wonder if that's the way he's doing it.
I'm sure that's 4D's intended use of that.
Yeah. Let's see. Why would I be doing that? You know, honestly, let's look at the reporter. Caller.name, caller.line, make link attributes. Test, it's in Mocha test. Yeah, the caller. The caller is passed in. Here he is, get caller. Yeah. Oh yeah, get call stack. It's actually in it's in Lodash. I actually have a function called gets call stack, which gets the call stack from anywhere. Actually, it uses my error. Yeah, uses error. So, which I will cover later. So yeah,
Okay.
you can from anywhere you want, from anywhere in your code, you can call _get call stack, and that returns the call stack. At this point, it removes everything up to this point of calling.
That's pretty cool because I think what the call chain is only available during on an error. I can't remember if it's always available or if it's only available on an
It's
error.
actually turns out it is. Turns out. Turns out it's always get call chain is always available.
Oh, okay.
Turns out, yeah. So anyway, so where was I? Oh yes. So okay, back to the test. Always asking these. You're always taking us off track, Tim. All right, let's see.
I'll
Sorry,
be
that-
quiet. I'm
that-
sorry. I'll be
No, it's
quiet.
okay. I'm joking. I'm
yeah,
joking.
I claim that one.
Yeah, it's okay. So, okay, so let's say, now, the other thing we can do is we can have multiple assertions together here. So I could also, for example, let's say I want to make sure that this is actually a string. I'd say to be a string. And then make this nicer. That strict equals reads nicer that way, okay? So actually, I have two assertions here in one test. And let's see. So here, I'll show you. Okay, so now one thing we can do is we can actually, in addition, okay, no, that's so let me fix this. So let's make that work. And now, yes, okay. Okay, so now let's say, now I could, the other way I could do this, I could have also done it like, like this. And I can add a second test. Oops, BA. Okay. So that also works. Now, what if one of those failed? Now, it's often very useful to have a whole series of things like this. So, but then like if one of them fails, so if I actually make this fail, you're like wondering, okay, well, okay, which one of these tests failed? Okay, you may actually have, in some cases, when in my test runner for Lodash, sometimes I'll have like 10 of these, 10 tests, 10 assertions in one test. So what you can do is an expect can take a second argument, which is like a label, and this is now when it fails, see, I get that it prepends that label. So
That's nice.
so that tells me that is a way to tell me which one failed. So what else? What else? So yeah, so that's basically, and just to give you here, if you want to see like a full-fledged test suite, here's the test suite for like well, actually, so these are the methods I'm testing within this class, but then then it's going to run the tests for all. It's going to instantiate all those test classes. So it's going to instantiate binder test, datetime test. These are like base names, and it adds test at the end. So binder test, datetime test, Lodash collection test. So it'll instantiate this top level one will instantiate all these and run them. So we run this, we get the whole thing, and it's all those.
That's great. I'm sure all of us have full test suites for everything that we write, but you know, this is a really good practice, and it's a great way to organize it and to make it sane. I love the I love the handling words, you know, should be,
you
know,
chain words. So here's some more complex tests. You know, here and this is taking advantage of what I told you last time about local variables being captured by formulas. So this dollar fixture here is captured by this formula at the point that the formula is defined. So this dollar fixture will be this particular value, and this dollar fixture will be this particular value, and so on. That's actually a nice intended or an unintended feature of formulas. I don't know, but it is a nice feature. And so here, so here I'm saying, okay, I expect the fixture to be a collection that has strict members, and yeah, so yeah, here's a case where I've got multiple assertions. Yeah, so you can do some pretty sophisticated stuff.
Yeah, this is very timely for me. The database that I'm working with is an API-driven database, and we use those APIs also to our own front end, web front end. But I will at some point be doing commercial APIs where partner companies will be writing data in. I've done this in the past a lot, but as you know, you have to validate, did I get the right number of attributes? Are they named correctly? Is there data in them? Is there enough attribute data to maintain data integrity within relational tables? And are they the right data types?
Right.
And you have to assume everything is wrong from the get-go.
Right, yeah.
This will be very, very helpful in doing this in a modern way.
And this becomes especially important. I mean, once you write the initial test suite and you've covered all of the, you cover all the edge cases. And I mean, I found quite a few subtle bugs in my code just by going through the process of writing tests. But in addition, even more importantly, when I started writing tests, it was like, I actually realized that there was a better way to structure the API of the different methods.
One of the best things, I memean, among the best things anyways, about having these tests in hand is, as the speed of 4D's 4D's own development and feature releases speeds up. You have this already ready to test all of your code at, after upgrade, so you can upgrade with certainty, because odd things happen sometimes, and strange behaviors creep into the language, and this helps to give you certainty that your code is still valid.
Yeah, and even more importantly, every time you change your code, you want to make sure that you haven't broken anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right. So that's, every major framework or library that's out there has extensive test suites, and they especially have these test suites because they want to make sure when they have put out a new version, there are no regressions. Regression means, and so yeah, having test suite is just really,
it looks like a lot of work, but in the end, it's actually very liberating.
yes. And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and like I said, it actually helps you to find subtle bugs.
Yeah.
It helps you to think more clearly about how you've actually, because like when you first write a method, you think, okay, well, I want to pass this in and get this back, and then you start writing a test suite, and you start covering edge cases, and you realize, well, you know what? I think there's a better way to actually structure the way this is called, which makes more sense, and that happened to me quite a bit in the process of writing these tasks. And also it also led me to like add new features or take out things that didn't need, features that didn't make sense and things like that. So yeah.
This will be incredibly helpful to me because our database has there's no client server interface, and it's data being written in and being published out. And one of the biggest hassles is debugging and making sure that things are going where they're supposed to go.
Right.
And yes, I log and I do all of that, and I have proactive logs and stuff, serious errors get emailed to me, but nonetheless, it's time consuming, time spent with the debugger that could have been
exactly
much easier done with this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, manually doing this in the debugger is just, it's not the way. So okay, so and I showed this last time, but it's very useful. Let's say I've got my master test suite, which runs everything. But let's say, okay, well, let's say something breaks. And let's say, for example, somewhere in here, let's just change this to true. Run this. And somewhere in there, there's a failure. Well, all I have to do is click on this. It shows me the failure. And now I can go there and figure it out. Well, while I'm figuring out why this isn't working, there may be actually a problem in my code. So while that's happening, I don't want to have to run the entire test suite every time. So what I can do is I can just append only to that, and only this, and now it's only going to run this test within this suite, theoretically. Oh, I take it back. Oh yeah, I have to do only at the top level. Say this is dot only. Let's see, yeah. Oh, right, wrong one. Sorry, not there. Here, yes. Let's see if this works. Yay, okay. So, ooh, I've got a typo. Look at that. Where was that?
Live
There,
debugging.
here we go. Formula. There we go. Okay. So yes, so that's like a quick way if I want to just focus on the thing I'm trying to fix, right? Then I don't have to run like all 600 tests or however many there were. So let's say I go here and I fix this. Where was that? There it is. Oh, here. Yeah. So this should be false. I can take out the only. Well, let's just check it, make sure it's correct. Ah, now it all works, and I can take out the onlys. And likewise, I can also say skip, and it'll skip that suite or that test. All right. Moving on. Okay, so what are some of these handy dandy utility classes? Okay, binders and functors. This is kind of an advanced thing. I'll just show it to you real quick. What would be an example? Let's say
It reminds me of the about on your LinkedIn, Aparajita, where you describe, my methodology helps to create virtually bug-free code. Well, this is how one does that with the test suites and whatnot.
oh yeah, the test suite, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing how the error handling works when you're actually using this, like Lodash, you're using it and you pass something invalid into some class function.
Mhm.
What?
Yeah, when I get
does it trigger a
to
runtime error, or is how does the error handling work?
well, when I get to the error, I'm just working my way down
Okay, great, great.
these classes, and I'll get to the error handling.
Yeah, so
So
to add to what Brent was saying, I would say it's also the only way you can sleep it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it provides great comfort and allows you to feel like you can go out and make more changes and be more aggressive in certain areas because
Yeah.
you have the certainty that you're not breaking stuff, elsewhere.
yeah,
And
I mean, it's not a certainty. It's only a certainty as far as your tests go.
Sure.
And
if
you miss an edge case, then yeah, but it definitely gives you a whole lot more certainty. Let's put it that way.
Do you have a transport to email, or is that something we would just add?
You could just add it. Yeah, just write it.
Yeah.
I mean, all a transport is literally the transport. Literally, the API to the transport is literally log info. That's it. So you can do whatever the heck you want once you get that.
Cool.
You can we can all add Splunk.
Splunk, email, whatever you want. Put in the database, anything you want. Okay, let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. Okay. All right, so now that's fairly straightforward. Nothing, super fancy there. So I've got this formula which takes a greeting and an object which has first name, last name, and puts it all together. So now let's say you wanted to do a whole bunch of stuff. Let's see. Make this an object. So this is, let's say you've got a person and you have the whole bunch of stuff you need to do to that person. Oops. Oh. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, yeah, might help. There we go. No, person. All right, there we go. Yay. Okay. So let's say we had a whole bunch of things we needed to do to this person, and it would be, and we always, let's say we want to create, say, a global formula which always applies to this person. So what we can do is we can bind and use bind, which takes a function. This is what bind. It returns an object whose call or reply method will call func with this set to this arg. If one or more partial args are passed, they are prepended to whatever arguments are passed to bound func.call. So what does this mean in practice? So I want to bind this formula to that. And now $1 now, so now when I call these functions, this is going to be bound to that. It's going to be set to that. So this bind actually returns a new formula, which binds this to whatever you pass to it. And now I actually don't need to pass the person anymore. Oop. Oh yeah, right. Has to be 1. Yeah. Okay. And so there are cases.
Does person end up with the new formula in it, or is it
person just becomes this becomes the this, okay? It's the equivalent of me calling by doing this, it's the equivalent of me doing this.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's interesting way to
Okay.
go about it.
Yeah, so that's one of the features of binding, but also binding also prepends whatever extra arguments I pass. So if I actually pass hello there, then I don't even need to pass hello here. Because any arguments I pass after the this argument get prepended to the argument list. So let's say I also want to add a suffix. Okay. So now that, oops, this is actually $1 now, right? Oh, no. Call. Oh, right, I have to say null, right? There, okay. So this could be, let's call this greet. So what's happening here? So what's happening is, so that when I get a bound function, function, when I use the call on it, whatever I pass here just gets ignored, because I've already bound the this value. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a new formula which is bound to, this is going to be whatever this is, and I passed an extra, this argument, this here is going to be $1. So this call here is the equivalent of that's the equivalent. So binding, in some cases, it's a kind of thing where you see the pattern of code which says to you, if I could pre-bind this formula, and it will save me a lot of typing. So instead of having to do this all the time, I just do it once. So if I've got this greeting, then it just saves me a lot of duplicated code.
It's an interesting approach.
Yeah. And there's also a bind right, which does the same thing, but instead of prepending this argument, it appends this to the whatever argument list. So so now $1 was this, and this became $2. Anyway, that's a more advanced thing. And that the way that's done is through something called a functor. And a functor is a class which acts like a formula, but it can contain state. So it acts like a formula in that it has a call, method and an apply method, and it acts just like formula.apply or formula.call. But since it's a class, when you create an instance of a functor, that it can have state along with it. And that's actually how binding is implemented. Anyway, you can look at that on your leisure. Let's see, errors. Okay, so this is really important. You know, we just don't have a native error class in 4D. And so every other language I know of has one. And so which encapsulates, you know, the message and the code and the stack and all that stuff. So I've implemented basically the equivalent, all of the error handling stuff that 4D provides in a single object. And in addition, I have an error handler which has a stack. So anytime, and the default error handler creates an error instance. Why does it keep doing this? Creates a Zoom keeps trying to install a kernel extension. Let's see. So when I want to execute some code that might throw an error, I push the error handler. I run some code. And you'll probably want to, like, at the very, you know, in your database startup, do push error handler. So you are definitely always getting error instances. So now, let's see what happens. There we go. So, so push error handler by default, if I don't pass anything, it pushes the default error handler, which is this, which just sets the last error to an instance of cs.error.new, which captures whatever the last error message was, the error code, and the stack. And it takes care of removing from the stack everything before the caller.
Is there a way to force an error?
Yes. Well, you just, yeah. So you say throw. You can also pass an optional error code if you want.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Great.
So, and this is a stack. So, you know, if you want a different error handler, you can push a different error handler and it's all nested, and, you know, as long as you push and pop symmetrically, you'll be fine. But the nice thing about it being a stack is anytime so like all my code anywhere where there might be an error, I always push an error handler, push and pop an error handler, so that I know my code is going to generate an error object, but I'm not going to mess up your error handler. Although I don't know why you would ever want to use anything else once you start using this. But, you know, the beauty of it is you can, because it's a class, you can make subclasses of it. So I made a DB error class, which extends error. In addition to the message and the error code, it also takes a table and an optional field. And then I implemented the description, which, you know, which augments the default description with information about the table and the field. So throw takes there's two ways to call it. You can pass a message and an optional error code, or you can throw an instance. Actually, let's see. I think you can do three things.
Can you use throw in an if statement without going to an else?
You mean if throw?
Well, okay, so a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times I'm getting, a submitted REST call and it's missing an attribute. So I have to test for that. And I hate if else statements. So I use, is defined, undefined, if not undefined.
Yeah.
It creates a lot of if else's that are just
Yeah.
horrible
Well,
nightmare.
yeah, unfortunately, until we get exceptions in 4D, there's no escaping it, unfortunately. Even though this has made it, a little more palatable, you still have to unfortunately test at every place where you think there might be an error, just because we don't have exceptions. So, yeah, and that's nowhere on the radar. So, so I could also say throw cs.db error.new. And there's error code, and I'm going to pass table and the field. Let's just pass the table. I won't pass the field. So see, now I got it. So now I got an instance of DB error. And that's dot. Okay. There we go. So you can make your own error classes. And you can do stuff like you could say like if instance of last error cs.db error, right? And do something there, else do something else. Anyway, so that's the nice thing about having an error class hierarchy is you can test what type of error was thrown.
That is nice. Again, that's a very common library that any longtime developer would have already at least dabbled into making, but this is very elegantly done. Modern approach.
File. This you'll like. So what I did is I made a class which wraps all of the native 4D.file functionality and implements all of the legacy system document stuff as part of the same class. And I have no idea why 4D didn't do that to begin with. I just don't know. And this is why they need an RFC process, because if they'd asked us, we would have said, why aren't you wrapping that into the file class? So, so what can we do? We can, okay, so this is normal. This is the same as, as this. So that's just going to create the file object. It's not going to actually open it. But now, so this will actually open it for reading. And I can read, whereas with the 4D file object, I can only read the entire contents. This is the equivalent of received packet. And whatever the doc ref is, right? So let's get my, there we go. Let's run this. Da-da-da. There we go. If we open, all right, so I've got this text file. And so, I'm telling it to read each line. And I could also pass a number of bytes. And it works just like receive packet. And there's also read blob, which will read a number of bytes into a blob. And one of the cool things is, so there's a bunch of open modes. Open. Here we go. Yeah. So there's append, and then there's fails the pass exists. So let's say I do, here's where errors become great. So if I say, that does not exist. Oh, that's interesting. If not, that should have failed. All right. Well, that's interesting. Forty did not generate an error. Just gave me a 0 doc ref. Oh, I have to fix that. Okay. I did not know 4D would do that. All right.
Do you think it's possible to use this library somehow integrated with the 4D command asserted?
With what?
With the 4D command asserted? Because asserted allows you to test for a condition and throw an error in like an if statement. Without the need for an else, it will trigger the on error method. And then I was thinking that with it might be possible
Yeah.
to then do some of this within the on error, and then you can when you want to also.
Well, no, because I mean, all the assert will do is all assert is going to do is just generate an error, but that doesn't actually, you've still got to test and see if an error was generated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, assert is really, traditionally, assert is really just meant to be a debugging device. It's not really meant to check for error conditions. It's meant to assert that certain invariants are met. Certain conditions are met. So, yeah.
Probably wouldn't work. Okay.
Yeah. So it wouldn't work. I mean, it wouldn't help me here. I mean, all I need, I just need to add, what I'm missing here is I need to here, where is it? Yeah. I need to check that the docref actually is non-zero. That's what's missing. So
No, in this case, I could see it would help. No.
yeah. But if I do this, so write mode, yes. So if I do WX, so this is one of the nice things. If I do WX, it opens the file for writing. If the file is created if it does not exist, or truncated if it exists. But if I do WX, it'll fail if the path exists. So actually, let me do this first. Let's do write and write hello. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, no error. I look here, it created the file, and sure enough, there it is. Now, if I try this again, just do that. So the W mode will create the file if it doesn't exist and truncate it if it does exist. So now, if I run this, I'll just end up with hello. Oh, to truncate a non-open file. Well, obviously, I need to debug my code. So, oh, because I didn't close it there. So now here's a nice thing I did. So if you use my file class, it actually saves the docrefs to all the open files to a global storage. So I can say files dot close all. Now I'll clean it up. Nope, take it back. I'll have to fix that. Maybe because it's open. No, not there. All right, anyway. If I do WX, it's going to fail because attempt to open an existing file in WX mode, right? So anyway, this I hope you think is very useful to have everything in one class.
Yeah, it's interesting why 4D wouldn't have added the packet capabilities into their file class.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but you can do it. Now, here is, I'll show you why I asked you to vote for one of my feature requests was to allow use to not fail if the object passed to it is not shared. And the reason is, let's say, for example, let's see, my foo class. That's enough. All right, this looks normal, right? And if I okay. And let's look at the object itself. Okay, so that works great. Now, what if we actually want to store an instance of this globally? First, I have to do that. Drives me nuts. And now watch what happens. Anybody predict what's going to happen? That's what happens. Because now this instance of foo is shared. And I can't, so this now is a shared object and I can't change it without wrapping it in use. So now my nice foo object, my foo class, which was perfectly usable outside of shared storage, now to use in shared storage, anytime I mutate the properties of the object itself, I have to say if OB is shared, this, use this, and else. Anyone else think that sucks? It really sucks. And so what if this was like 10 lines of code? Well, I either have to copy these 10 lines of code or I have to make another function, right, which implements those 10 lines of code.
It was interesting, the discussion, the differing opinions about that in the feature request. I agree with you. What's the harm in being able to use on a non-shared?
Those arguments, I'm sorry, those arguments against it were misguided. This is a mistake.
So the alternative would be that if you were trying to use a shared object and you hadn't enclosed it in a use statement, it would automatically do that for you?
Nope.
No?
Nope. I mean, and the solution is quite simple. If use would just be a no-op if the object passed to it is not shared, then I wouldn't have to duplicate the code. And all I would have to do is that, and if it's not shared, it would have no effect. But right now, if this is not shared, if this is not shared, see, watch it now. If this is not shared, it's going to die when I call this, expecting a shared object. So, yeah. So this was a major oversight when they implemented use, because they just,
Could they make this change to the language now? It probably would. I guess it would be, well, it can't because it's going to break existing.
Yeah, no, they could absolutely make the change. There's absolutely no harm and no side effect, because currently you cannot pass a non-shared object to use, right? So they will generate an error. And if you pass a non-shared object to use in the future, well, that's because you meant to, and there's certainly no harm in it not doing anything. So
if there's no error yet, then making use more flexible wouldn't break anything.
Yeah, it would not break current code.
No.
But at least it would allow you not to have to do this kind of crazy stuff, and yeah, and then plus I also had a feature request to be able to say cs.foo.new shared, because right now you can't create a shared instance of a class. You have to create a non-shared instance and then say ob copy, you know, and copy it to a shared instance. And sometimes that, depending on how the class is constructed, that may not work. You have to do some extra work to make it actually be copied correctly. And it's just a mess. So
If anyone's wondering, I put the links to at least 4 of Aparajita's feature requests in the chat window. And they're
Yeah,
also in the slides. And I believe you said you had one more, but
yeah, that one I haven't written up yet.
yeah.
That RFC proposal. Okay, let's see. I got a few minutes left. We'll go over performance. Yeah, performance timeout timer. So performance is quite simple. Let's see. Yeah. So let's say so let's say I want to know how long it takes this to execute. And so all I have to do is say this work function count this args. Okay. So I say this dot bar as that's the formula. This arg is foo. Oh no, then the count and this arg. Okay. Count would be, say, I don't know, 1,000. And this arg is foo. And oop, under collection. What's missing? I haven't used this in so long. If this arg there past the font. Okay. Let's do it this way. Is that right? Looks correct. Alert. There we go. So this is useful for, you know, when if you want to time your code and see how long it's taking. This makes it just super easy.
That's
Just
great.
wrap the call in the formula, tell how many iterations you want, and boom, there you go. Timeout, yes, timeout is quite useful. Here's some sample code. Let's grab that. Let's see. Oh, okay. Might help if I could spell correctly. There we go. This is why I need a little time to make sure everything's working correctly here. Before I release this. All right, let's try this again. expired. Okay, so it's quite simple. So it lets you, yeah. Anytime you have some time-bound operation, this makes it super easy to check the timeout. And timer creates a millisecond timer, and yeah. So back here, I can make a timer. And label, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, so that's also, this is again another debugging tool. So so if you just want to see how long a given chunk of code takes, it's just that easy, 2 lines of code. And you can have multiple timers. That's the nice thing. You can have multiple timers, and they can, they can be nested. And so if you've got like an inner thing you want to time and an outer thing you want to time, you can have 2 separate timers, and each has its own label. So this, let's say this is outer, and this is or you could, you could log it.
Can you just say stop timer?
Or 2.time. Yeah, time. ToString. Still running, yeah. Let's see if this works. There we go.
Nice.
And now you see the beauty of having console. Because I didn't have to use an alert, which would have messed up my time. I couldn't use an alert here because that would have messed up my outer time, right? So, so that this is one of the a perfect example of how having a console really helps in debugging.
Yeah, that's going to be incredibly useful to me. Testing for performance on, REST calls, services. It's just nightmarish without something like this.
Yeah. Who is that? Who's talking?
Joshua here.
Josh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you'll either smile or cry when I come out with my next component, which is an implementation of Express.js.
Oh,
Yeah, a complete implementation of Express.js. Well, 90%. Yeah, so which is so for creating APIs, it's
yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to, if you wouldn't mind, if we could have a few conversations before, because there's things that I've run into that just would like to see in it.
Yeah. Well, there's basically nothing it can't do. I mean,
Okay.
Express is the most popular like REST server in the world. And it's completely configurable.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it more has to do with obfuscating date, your internal data structures, all your internal names, and being able to
Yeah, well, that's the whole,
present
yeah.
an entirely
Yeah.
different thing to the world.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. I mean, with
Okay.
Express is you define the actual structure of the URLs and the API yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the data, the naming of attributes?
Yeah, no, it's totally arbitrary. It's totally
Okay.
up to you. I mean, it's
Okay.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. There's no, you can name it whatever you want. You can
Right.
structure it however you want. You can name it however
Yeah.
you want.
Because
Yeah.
the thing, I mean, I don't use any of 4D's stuff
Yeah.
because I'm not exposing my data structure to the world. Are you
Right,
kidding?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge security hole. Yeah.
It's massive. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I mean, if you contact me privately, I can show it to you real quickly and you can
Well,
decide
yeah,
whether it's
I'd just love to have a conversation. There may be some good things that come out of it for who knows?
okay. Any questions? No, you're asleep. You're gonna put you to sleep this time. Okay.
We're hooking something all up. The only comment I had is when I watched you using Mocha, you knew where to put like skip and only, okay? But even you had to do it a couple times to get it right. I'm debugging any of this is going to be a challenge. I mean,
That's why you sign up for the training.
Exactly. Because in the I guess in the training, we'll be more exposed to how to do this. That's what I'm most interested in, is the Mocha part of this.
Yeah, I mean, everything. I mean, even that, it's in the documentation. It's actually is there. Let me see if I look at. If I
The longer we could have this stuff before your training sessions, the more likely we are to be able to learn better. 4D does a terrible job of throwing you into a class with no preparation at all, so you have no ramp on it at all.
Yeah, I pretty much stopped.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll
classes for those
definitely,
reasons.
the component will definitely come out before the training, but I don't want to, I'd like the training to be available fairly soon afterwards so that, people can get the most out of it. Because it's just so huge. I mean, there's like, what is it, 300, 400 functions, 30 classes, and it's all tons of new stuff.
I noticed you created a class called file.
Yeah.
And there is a 4D command called file.
Right.
And it worked. So I could create a class called date, couldn't I?
You could. Well, I did. You don't have to. I created a date time already.
Is it called date? Is it called date?
Yeah, I showed it
type?
last time.
Okay.
Come on,
I
Tim.
just didn't realize you could name a class after a 4D
Yes.
command name.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can name, but because you can only remember, you have to instantiate it via CS dot.
The dot notation makes it work.
CS dot file, right?
The dot notation makes it work because it's dot.
Well, no, because
and
it's
file.
CS dot file versus 4D dot file.
Yeah.
But also the other interesting thing is you can actually have a method name which is the same name as a class. So you can actually have a method called not file, because file is a command, but let's say you could have a method called date and a class called date. Because you never reference the date class except through cs.date. Yeah. So when this is, by the way, when this is a component, what you would actually, when you're using this as a component in the host database, the my utility classes, you would say underscore CS dot file. So underscore CS gives you access to the class store in the component, because each component has its own class store.
That's the interface that you have a class.
I have a function. I have
Oh.
a global method called underscore CS,
Okay, I
which
understand.
returns the components CS.
I understand. Okay. yeah.
That's crafty.
So within the host database, to access the components classes, you say underscore CS dot whatever. Yeah, it's just a trick. It's just a trick. It's just a method which is returning. If you let me share the screen, Brent.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I wondered if how much difficulty you're going to run into putting this into a component. There's obviously going to be some changes from having it in the host database.
I'm actually, no, not, it's just very few. I mean,
Okay,
so
but there's just a few. Okay.
that's all, this is it. I mean, I just, I mean, here, I could just as easily have said underscore CS. So in the host database, you'll do it like that. Yeah.
I couldn't remember that that component classes that they don't show up in the in the host. Yeah.
No, they do not. They don't. No, they don't show up. Yeah, still working.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't show up in the Explorer. No. Component methods do, but component classes do not.
Right. That's why everyone has to dance around the instantiation part of it.
No, you have to dance around the instantiation part of it because in the host database, CS refers to the host's class store.
Right.
And whereas the component has a completely separate class store and a completely separate storage.
Right.
Yeah. So these methods are global. They get shared, but so anyway, but yeah, that's why I do have to make documentation, I guess, because when you're using it as a component, you'll need to be able to refer to the docs because you won't see the source code to the classes.
Well, maybe that's a feature that's coming in the future. They'll build this out so that.
Well, it's going to be, yeah, I mean, I was told R4 is feature complete, so that means it's going to be a year before you see that.
Yeah.
At the earliest. So, yeah, so I guess I'll have to do documentation.
Well, awesome.
Okay.
We're all looking forward to getting our hands on that and experimenting ourselves. It's a lot to digest. A lot of great work.
Yeah, it is. It's really great. Very timely.
Well, I hope you all found useful. Just a straw poll here. So considering everything that's there and that it's probably going to save you hundreds of hours and is significantly improving your developer experience and the functionality you've gotten 4D, how much would you pay? How much is it worth to you?
Including the training sessions?
No, not including the training sessions.
I'd easily pay 300.
Good question. What sort of licensing model?
Oh, it would just be, it would be a one-time licensing for all platforms, because there's no way for me to, there's not gonna be kind of a registration code or anything. So
So you're thinking about two
there's two things. There's the component, and then there's add-on training. Yeah.
And the component is source only, or compiled
is-
and one and source.
It's the actual component, which includes the source. Yeah, it's not
Okay.
compiled.
All
Not
right.
compiled. Yeah. Yeah, you get the source because a big part of it is being able to look at the source code and learn from it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think $400 to $700 is perfectly reasonable. If you throw the training in with it, you could do 700. I don't know what people think.
Well, the thing is, it's like 10 hours of training.
Okay.
So 700 is, to me, is not enough.
Okay.
You know, I mean, to me, it's like the component itself is worth at least 3. I mean, like NTK is like what, $600,
Right.
the plugin. I mean, and honestly, I think this offers even more than that does. So,
It's superb. I don't see any problem with $600 on
Oh,
for this component
maybe
either.
maybe $1,000
I-
bundle component and training together, something like that, maybe.
maybe more like 1,500 bundle, because I mean, you know, 10
Okay.
hours is it's a lot of training. It's like that's like 2,
Okay.
3, 4 days, whatever however you want to do it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
Oh, yeah.
um,
I'm okay
so-
with I'm okay with 1,500 as a bundle.
I mean, it's gonna, you know, it's like it's definitely gonna pay for itself. That's for sure.
I agree.
Yeah, many times over. I mean, I think my you know, I think the marketing for it is like 100%, what is it? 100% 4D code, 100% thread safe, 100 times, 100x productivity. You know, that's what it gives you.
I think the training will certainly be extremely worthwhile. Might be worth keeping the price low and keeping the training price high just to draw people in that direction, because you know, obviously you'll get 100 times the value if you know what you're doing with it.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
certainly would be. I wouldn't be interested in just getting the component. It's got to be both. It's got to be component
Right.
and the training. That's
Yeah,
to
I
me, that's
understand.
important.
And then also, Walt Nelson, he suggested the idea of me offering office hours, like once a month. So like if there'd be certain hours, like twice a month, where I'd be available to answer questions and give, you know, tips on how to do various stuff in 4D using object-oriented methodology and so forth.
You're going to include that in with this also?
No,
Or
that
not?
would be separate. That would be a separate thing.
Sure. That sounds like that's a
Right.
fantastic idea. Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Okay, I will work on that. And yeah,
Maybe,
so
maybe even an advance or a early copy so that we could all help with your debugging process.
Yeah, I don't have a problem paying whatever you're going to sell the component for early. I'll pay it in advance early. I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with that at all. And then when you
Right.
get the bundle for the training, then I go for the training too.
yeah, then you get a
I'll get
discount
more
on,
out of
if you already
training.
own the component, then you get a discount on the training. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all.
I would prefer that too, so that we start getting, you know, we need to get dinged up on it and figure out where we bash our face into it.
Because like I said, it's very timely for me. And I'm right at that point where I have all the old ways that I used to do this, which I do not want to use again.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I have to go to the new ways. And I'm, you know, kind of at that curve with 4D where I don't really know best practices yet for
Right.
the class system. What are the limitations and all that? And that's what interests me the most. I mean, not the most, but it's equal, is, okay, what is the optimized best practice method of implementing classes, et cetera, in 4D? You know, because I know I'm just scratching the surface with them currently.
Yeah. Would the training be something I could do in the future? Yeah, well, it will be in the future because it's not ready. So, and anyway, it would be, in any case, I would probably, I'm not quite sure if I would do it as a live thing or if it would be a pre-recorded, video training.
I think you're pre-recorded and then subsequently your office visits make.
Right,
it-
exactly. So pre-recorded, and then you can,
Agreed. I
then you
think that's
can
good.
buy office hours if you want to, I mean, if you pay for the training, you get like, say, a certain number of like an hour of one office hour. And then if you want to get more, then you can pay.
You guys mind if I tie up the recording and then we can
Yep.
continue
Yep.
the discussion afterwards? All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to
Thank
Aparajita
you.
for
Thank
all
you,
of your
everyone.
great
Thanks, Brad.
work. And, it's really enlightening. And again, it will give us help to give us better practices elsewhere in all of our code. And there's a wealth of value in what you're doing. So I hope one way or another that you find a good model to distribute it. So thanks for making extra time to show it off to everybody. Thank you all for joining. You don't have to leave.
All right. I'll see you all down the road.
All right.
Thanks so much, Brad. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
All right.